Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Mental Matters. I am your host, Chance Dunkel, and I'm here with special guest Kurt Crays. For nearly 25 years, Kurt has provided not-for-profit leadership at World Relief, an international relief and development organization, and two refuge and unaccompanied refugee minor voluntary agencies at World Relief and Lutheran Immigration and Refuge Service, both headquartered in Baltimore, Maryland. In 2014, Kurt began his tenure as the executive director of EUMA, a public charity here in Erie, ending homelessness by making it rare, brief, and one time, as Jesus would. EUMA does this through an integrated continuum of care that ends with permanent housing. Housing and homeless services include a 34-bed emergency shelter called the Refuge for Families with Children, a 10-bed transitional shelter called Liberty House for veteran men, Erie County's 38-bed emergency overflow shelter called Our Neighbor's Place for single adult men and women. EUMA operates the Rainbow Connection thrift store that provides neighbors in need with clothing, shoes, boots, and other resources needed free of charge while selling gently used items to the public. Finally, EUMA has added 38 units of temporary and permanent apartments and single-family detached housing devoted to those experiencing a housing crisis, including for youth aging out of foster care. Kurt received his Master of Divinity from Asbury Theological Seminary in Wilmore, Kentucky, after completing his bachelor's degree in Christian Ministries and minor in peacemaking at Messiah University, Grantham, Pennsylvania. Kurt and his wife Becky are proud parents of 13-year-old Cora, who attends Bethel Christian School. So, Kurt, with all that being said, how are you doing today?
Chance, thank you so much for having me, and thanks to the Mental Matters folks for this time to get together and chat about homelessness and mental illness.
Well, we're grateful that you're taking the time to be here and, discuss homelessness with us. So, last podcast, we talk about many different topics. We've talked about summer safety, we've talked about school resources, we talked about LGBTQ resources. But there's a big one that we don't hit too often, and that's homelessness. So, what is the leading cause of homelessness?
Yeah, so there are many, many causes. When we're talking about youth in particular, we will talk about foster care, I hope, during this time. But I did want to highlight that foster care is sometimes referred to, or kids coming out of foster care, or emancipated coming out of foster care, as the highway to homelessness. And that's definitely an indicator or puts people more at risk of entering the homeless system. Individuals who don't have a family, or as they emancipate, they don't have that security that many of us take for granted.
Yeah, so I definitely experienced that when I, aged out. So I can understand where you're coming from. I think people don't see how foster care can be the highway to homelessness, but unless you live it, you don't know it.
Yeah, so every year, 20,000 youth age out of foster care. The stats are not great. 20% of those youth who are emancipated will enter the homeless system within 2 years without an intervention. 25% will end up with justice involvement, and a full 50% of youth aging out of foster care will lose their kids within 2 years to the system. And the thing that concerns me most, and something that I would love for Mental Matters to tackle, is that the leading cause of death for unaccompanied 18 to 24-year-olds is suicide.
Yeah, and being, a youth between the ages of 18 and 24, I've definitely experienced my fair share of mental health crises. And that's what Mental Matters is about. It's about how can we normalize the discussion of mental health? How can we bring each other up and make sure resources are available to those who need it?
That is exactly some of the stuff that EUMA is working on as well, and many others in our community. We have a really strong network of behavioral health supports and EUMA staff working to make sure that individuals who are experiencing a housing crisis get the resources necessary to get permanent housing and keep permanent housing, and that often includes significant behavioral health supports.
Yeah, so I've spent time with you before, and I've went to different speaking things with you. One thing you say a lot is So many youth who age out of foster care end up homeless. And how can we as a community help EUMA make homelessness rare, brief, and one time? Like, what are things that we could work together, pull everyone together to do?
Well, the fastest, the most dignified, the thing that will have the strongest results is actually keeping people out of the homeless system. So, for youth aging out of foster care, for example, our partnership with Family Services of Northwest PA and Bethesda Lutheran Services to provide emancipated foster care youth with a transitional housing experience while they learn how to navigate life out of the system is definitely something that we're working to and is showing significant results, positive results.
Yeah, I mean, I believe I experienced that firsthand when I was 18 and exited out of foster care system. Family Services introduced me to you guys, and that's where this relationship began. Um, but there's a lot of people who don't know, what Family Services is, what EUMA is, and how to get connected with those resources. So when we go to share them, how can we, best explain it? Given like 30 seconds, if you had 30 seconds to explain what Family Services and EUMA were, what would you say?
Yeah, so this is a partnership to make sure that youth aging out of foster care have a means by which to enter a traditional housing unit. This would be an apartment, a private apartment, that you can learn to budget your money, learn what it means to have a lease. What does a lease say? What are your responsibilities? What does it mean to be a good neighbor? What do you do with your grease if you're frying chicken? You do not, by the way, pour it down the sink, ladies and gentlemen.
Or
Right?
throw it over Miss Holmberg's
Or
fence.
throw it over Mrs. Holmberg's fence into her backyard, right? These are all things that I had the benefit of a grandma who, had a can on the back of her stove that she put her grease in. But how do you know that if you don't have the care and the support of folks to teach you those things? And that's really what Family Services and Bethesda Lutheran Services and EUMA are partnering together to provide youth aging out of foster care.
So, what are some common psychiatric disorders we see among our homeless people, especially focusing on youth?
Yeah, I think the number of individuals that we have served with Bethesda and Family Services, the overwhelming majority of folks have a diagnosed mental illness. Many are experiencing substance use disorder. Many of them have already experienced justice involvement. And we really are coming alongside of these folks to make sure that they have the resources necessary to address those challenges as they learn to live independently.
So, I know that some of the buildings, like some of EUMA's homes, have resident advisors, right, or RAs. So, has any of the staff considered entering into like the North Star mentoring program, like becoming a mentor for a youth who didn't have that growing up, like didn't have someone to teach them, what to do with their grease, or how to have communications, how to find resources.
Yeah, I think the North Star mentoring program is definitely something that many of us naturally benefit from, right? I have people in my life who can hold me accountable and ask me if I'm doing okay, or help me answer questions that I don't know the answer to. And the North Star mentoring program is a way for youth aging into foster care to get those resources through mentors who are committed. EUMA has had at least two staff who formally joined the North Star mentoring program and have worked with youth aging out of foster care. And it's been a huge benefit to them, and I think it's been a benefit to the folks that they've mentored as well.
That's great to hear because I mean, I know when I first moved in, I was not part of North Star, and so I really didn't know a lot of things. And the staff, you and Lori, they've all helped raise me. You helped bring me up from some kid that didn't know the first thing to do.
Sure. Yeah.
Showed me how to change batteries on my on my door.
Yeah.
Great
And then
times.
you showed me. So that's the thing.
That's
That's
the
what I love.
beautiful thing about friendships. And if we could become friends with our homeless neighbors, we could help raise them up just like you helped with me. So why don't we sit down and like have conversations with them? Like, what scares us from talking to them and finding out their story?
Yeah, I think, Chance, the thing that I'm always amazed by is the power of relationship. So you sitting across the table from me, and us having a conversations about things that I'm ignorant and I just haven't had. That's not my lived experience. That's not my experience, but willing to trust you and help you lead me through some of those things, and being vulnerable to let me ask what I think are stupid questions or things that it's not been my experience. And you've been phenomenal, and a huge blessing to me as I've learned about things that I just didn't know about. So I've been very, very thankful for you. I take advantage every single day of my privilege and my positive social bonds and social bridges that connect me to this community. And what we want to do at EUMA is take those positive social bonds and social bridges that we take advantage of every single day and extend them to the youth who are aging out of foster care and living in one of EUMA's apartments.
I know one of the most memorable things for me was the first day I moved into my apartment. You came upstairs. I had no clue who you were, but you came outside. You were getting ready to leave, and you stopped to introduce yourself, and you helped me get in contact with the maintenance guy who helped me use my door. And that was memorable because you're a stranger. You didn't know who I was. You didn't have to stop and help me, but you took the time on your day to make sure I was okay. And that's just why I keep coming back to is why, if we took the time out of our day to check in with our neighbors, we could potentially, decrease that chance of suicide.
100%. Right? Like, I've been spending some time reflecting on the work of Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers, in his neighborhood, and the things that he was teaching us through that program is all about what it means to be a good neighbor, like you're talking about, right? When you see your neighbor struggling, you go and find out what you can do to help, or like if something's out of the ordinary, just asking if she's okay, if your neighbor's okay. Shoveling the sidewalk opens up conversations and trust that we need in our community more than ever.
Yeah. So another thing that you say often is we can't have a conversation about homelessness without having a conversation about race. So tell us more about that.
We, again, to emphasize, we cannot have a conversation in the United States of America about homelessness without having a conversation about race. In Erie County, 13% of the population identify as Black, Indigenous people of color, while over 50% of the folks that EUMA serves in our shelters, these are literally homeless people, over 50% annually would identify as BIPOC. So again, BIPOC are disproportionately represented in the homeless population in our community. It is something that we need to have a conversation about.
Yes. I think there's a lot of people who need to hear, more about this. We are very ignorant when it comes to homelessness, and even more so when we don't live it firsthand. And being a white person, I have not had to suffer half the racial things my siblings have had to suffer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my, I grew up in a small town, and my siblings, our neighbors, used to throw racial slurs at them and treat them differently, and it used to bother me because I'm like, why are they any different than I am? What makes them different? And growing up, I learned why there was a difference, but I don't think there should be. I think everyone should be treated the same.
Yeah.
We all bleed the same color, right?
We do. And it's that relationship, Chance, that you were talking about before that I think makes all the difference. It's easy for us to disparage the other. It's easier for us to believe that they're different and we are, somehow better, or we can be more fearful when we're not in relationship with people. That's why I think your comment about the neighbors is so vitally important. We need to exercise what it means to be a good neighbor. Remember what that means, because I do think it will change the trajectory of our personal lives and our community and our nation.
Yeah, so I know earlier today you were spending time speaking to some youth about homelessness and how they can help. Um, so I think that brings me to my next point. If we started talking about what homelessness is and how we should treat our peers earlier, I know I think it would improve mental health and it would help bring up our homeless people. Like it would help raise awareness. So what do you think? Do you think it would help raise awareness?
Yeah, I think absolutely. And EUMA is committed to raising up the voices of individuals with lived experience. That includes individuals who've experienced a housing crisis, youth aging out of foster care. So any chance that we have to put people in contact with folks is our goal. And so I'm just honored to spend a little bit of time with you today at Mental Matters so that we can have these conversations and you can share more of your story.
Yeah, so my story was chaotic. I mean, 13 different foster homes and a bunch of different schools. You never know what's next. And really, when I aged out, I thought I was done for. Like I thought, okay, I'm just gonna be another person out there. I'm just another number. And I was fortunate in the aspect that I got help so quickly. But not many people are that fortunate. Not many people had the opportunity to be connected to the resources I was connected to. So that brings me back to what I initially opened with: is if we make the resources more available, if we share that they're there sooner, it could prevent people going homeless. Like it could take them from losing housing to finding different stable housing. And what does it take for us to do that? Like, do we need to start, going to more public events? Do we need to make signs? Like, what is it going to take for people to help our homeless neighbors?
Yeah, again, Chance, I think you and Mental Matters folks are doing a critical work to elevate the voices of people who are experiencing a housing crisis, who have mental illness, who have aged out of the foster care system. I think this is a huge, huge step. Your willingness to share your story, I think, is enormously helpful. And then inviting other people to share their stories as well, I think, is enormously helpful. I would also say that in the United States of America, there's never a money problem. It's not a money problem in the United States of America. It's an allocation problem. We haven't asked the right person at the right time, but we don't have a money problem in the United States of America. We have, for example, a significant need for permanent, affordable, and supportive housing in our community. And I'm really excited about some of the work that Infinite Erie is doing around this issue. And we've brought up and have had conversations, and funding is beginning to be allocated for permanent and temporary supportive housing in our community that EUMA is committed to scaling.
That's amazing. It's good to hear of all the positive changes being made, because you never know what's next as a kid in foster care. So knowing that there's things out there, it really is a light at the end of the tunnel. You know, when I was 16 years old, I was convinced I wasn't gonna see 18, and didn't think I was gonna see 19 either. I spent my 19th birthday. I got to see you guys. I got to see a few other close people, and I don't have that fear anymore because there's a light. I can see the positive changes being made. I can see the miracles being worked. So how do we be the light for others? How do we, light up that tunnel?
Yeah, I would say, Chance, that I am a person of faith. And I've got to tell you that we talk about the imago Dei. We talk about the image of God, and that all God's creatures, every person He made, was made in His image. And I want you to know that I see God in you. My God is so much bigger than I could have ever possibly imagined before I met you. And building those relationships with individuals that are different from us gives us an opportunity to see God and His greatness. I would encourage anybody who is listening, who's struggling with depression or not understanding your value to our community, that you are loved, you are valued. If you are struggling with mental illness, please, please, please ask for help, because you were made in the image of God and you're amazing.
That was going to bring me to one of the things I want to discuss later in the podcast, but I can actually bring it up now. I found out a few days ago a friend of mine lost their battle to mental illness, and when I first found out, it hit me pretty hard because I just didn't understand, why they were gone. They didn't deserve it. And I just want to reiterate what Kurt said. If any of you are out there struggling, please reach out. There's 988, the suicide helpline. There is the Trevor Project. There are so many things out there. So many people who want to listen to your story and want to support you. So please reach out for help.
Yeah. Know your supports. Protect yourself. Right. Like if you've got a plan, put the things that will implement that plan away. Do it right now. Separate yourself from the things that could harm you, and put some people in your life that you can call when you're struggling.
So many young people, they don't know what's next. They don't know, if they're going from one home to another. They don't know if they're going to eat at night. They don't know if they're going to be warm, if they're going to have lights, if they're going to have running water. Those are all things that so many people take for granted. And one thing that I've really always wondered is, if I have it, why can't they? So I've always been a big believer in sharing and making sure that other people are okay. And so I went to a church a couple weeks ago, and the kids made these little bags with a Bible and a gift card to give out to the homeless. And we were driving down the road, and the one little boy, he says to my friend, he says, "Mommy, we need to stop and give it to them." And we stopped, and just seeing the smile on this guy's face, this gentleman's face, because he knew he was getting a warm meal. He knew, that he wasn't gonna have to worry if he was gonna eat that day. It's amazing.
Yeah, I'm always amazed too, and want to remind us that this being a good neighbor is, in this act of giving selflessly, is as beneficial to the person you're serving as it is to us, right? Like this is life-giving for the giver. This when you hold tightly onto things, it is heart shrinking. I also want to just emphasize the importance of that relationship, right? So looking somebody in the eye, instead of giving somebody money, take them to lunch and hear their story, with permission, of course. Like, it's not an exchange. If they don't want to eat with you, that's okay. But I've never had somebody, and I understand power dynamic as well, but I've never had a person experiencing a housing crisis refuse my company. And in that relationship, I get to know them and the struggles that they're experiencing and the amazing people that they are.
It just brings us back to EUMA's mission to make homelessness rare, brief, in one time, and how awesome that is, that there is a group of people out there dedicated. They can such large group of people that are struggling. everyone says that poverty is decreasing, but that's as a nation, not as a county. We don't when they're looking at it, they look at sometimes they don't see the small numbers.
And for those experiencing a housing crisis, I want to emphasize the crisis part, right? Like it is um, a crisis. It's bad for your mental health. It's bad for your physical health. If you live in zip code 16501, your life expectancy is 16 years less than somebody that lives in zip code 16505, right? There's a reason that these stats exist in our community. And EUMA is committed to making sure that we keep people out of the homeless system, that if you enter the homeless system, we move you into a permanent home as quickly as possible. And then once you're there, that you do not come back into the homeless system because you have the supports necessary to keep you permanently housed.
Can you describe what a housing crisis is? Like, can you describe what chronically homelessness means?
Yeah, so first, housing crisis would be anything that would jeopardize someone's permanent housing. So it could be you're unable to pay your mortgage because your car broke down and you need the car to get to work, and you've gotten the car fixed, but you couldn't pay your mortgage. That's a housing crisis. If you have an eviction notice because you haven't been able to pay your rent because your utilities have gone up, or you've chosen to support your kids by getting them clothes that they need, right? So all the way through literal homelessness, where you no longer have a permanent place to call home, that you're living on the streets in a place not meant for habitation or in a shelter. EUMA is working to identify and work with all of those folks to make sure that they get into a permanent home as quickly as possible and stay there. Chronic homelessness is, by a definition of housing and urban development, or HUD, is anyone who has a mental illness diagnosis or a disability and has experienced a year or more or 12 months of homelessness under their belt, right? So it is both you have a disability and you have experienced over a year of homelessness. And this is really where the folks that you see on the street, many of these folks are chronically homeless. And to be perfectly honest, folks, they are the people, they are our neighbors who are most in need and costing our community the most. So because they don't have access to good health care, they're using the emergency room as their primary care provider. Their mental health is not good. They have substance use disorder because they're not using their mental health meds. Folks, if we moved a fraction of these folks off the streets and into permanent housing and wrap them with the social supports necessary to keep them there, it would be not only life-changing for those individuals, but it would be a huge, huge win for our community, while providing dignity for our neighbors in greatest need.
It's beautiful, what people can do, how people can rise each other, but it's also incredibly saddening to hear how much people are struggling and how many people don't have access to proper health care or a dentist, an eye doctor, to the things they need to be able to get themselves back on their feet. Uh, I I didn't struggle as bad as most people do. I struggled, but there are people out there who've been out there for years, and I admire them for the strength they have to keep going.
Some of the strongest people I know are individuals who are living each night on the streets of Erie, on the streets of Meadville, on the streets of both rural and urban places that we're aware of, right? These are folks who are resilient and strong, but I got to tell you, we know that their life expectancy is significantly less than somebody who is permanently housed, and EUMA is committed to getting folks like this into permanent housing as quickly as possible.
So I want to go back to the Mrs. Holmberg story because I brought it up, and I think that's something that we should share with them.
Yeah. So again, Chance, I had the privilege of growing up in a two-parent home. My dad loved to cook. He was the primary cook in the family. I had grandmas and church ladies and church men that came around me and my family that supported us when we needed it. And so many of the youth aging out of foster care, for example, just haven't had that. One of the first women that we had in the Journey Home program, which is working with youth aging out of foster care, came in and she was living independently. She made fried chicken and she had no idea what to do with the grease. And instead of asking, she took her hot grease and poured it over the back fence, which is, it was our fence, but Mrs. Holmberg's backyard. And the hot grease ran down her fence and destroyed her fence and destroyed her beautiful flower garden on the other side. And folks, what we're trying to do at EUMA is take the hand of Mrs. Holmberg and take the hand of this young woman who was aging out of foster care, not knowing what to do with her grease, and coming together. And in that relationship, they were able to clean the fence, scrape the fence, sand the fence, and repaint the fence. And in that relationship, she was able to learn what it means to be a good neighbor. That's what we're trying to do, is restore those social bonds and social bridges that we so many of us take for granted.
At EUMA, you guys do incredible work. I've seen it. I've lived it. Other people have lived it. And everyone I talk to is so impressed. They're so grateful for what you've done. I just wish I could help do more. I wish we would all come together to do more because, like I said before, we can see those numbers go down.
Yeah, again, Chance, I don't want to make your head swell up and explode all over the studio, but you are a personal blessing to me. I have learned so much from you. I think you're one of the strongest people I've met in my life. I take so much inspiration from you and the work that you're doing, the work at Mental Matters, the work that you've done at EUMA and other places is something that you are investing in the lives of our neighbors experiencing a housing crisis. And I just want you to know that I recognize that, and that the lives of the people that you've touched have changed for the better, mine included.
Well, I appreciate that, but I wouldn't change a thing. Just knowing that, I'm having some sort of impact on people is a blessing in itself. I remember when I lived near the shelter, there was this family with 2 young children next door, and recently I spoke to the mother and heard how much better the children are doing now. They're doing well in school, they're making friends, and it's really been a highlight because I've been struggling lately, with a little bit of my depression. And it's all worth it. I would not change a thing about my life because my experiences have made me who I am. And everyone's experiences help shape them. Yours, mine, Uncle John's down the street. They all, we go through things for a reason, and we might not understand it, but I personally wouldn't change it.
Yeah. T.S. Eliot said, "Home is where one starts from." Right. When you share that, I just want to highlight that that's a broad definition of home in my mind. I had so many people that came alongside of me and my family that made it possible for me to sit with you today. This kid from a rural community, first in his family to go to college, was made possible by this community that came around me and insisted that was the that was the path for me, and that they were going to make that happen if I wanted it to happen. What an amazing thing. We're definitely trying to create as many pathways for youth aging out of foster care and families with kids and veterans and single men and women who are both experiencing a housing crisis and who want the very things that me and my family wanted. We want to create that pathway. And the volunteers and stakeholders and donors and public and private partnerships, including Family Services of Northwest PA and Bethesda Lutheran Services, are making that possible for many folks who've experienced a housing crisis.
It's just all amazing work. And with that being said, I think, we're getting close to our time, but is there any last minute questions or any things you want to say?
Yeah, Chance, again, just thank you and Mental Matters folks for all the things that you are doing. Highlighting the work that you are doing in the mental health world is super, super important. I would add that if you are experiencing a housing crisis, the number to call to get assessed for your need would be 814-SHELTER. That's SHELTER. That's 814-SHELTER. If you have any housing crisis, you'll get assessed for need and referred to the appropriate housing resource in our community.
Thank you, Kurt, for coming on and being our special guest and for all the work you do. And with that being said, I hope all of you are being safe, being good, and we'll see you on the next episode.